was just hanging around the house, so he would go to the swimming pool. I'd go sit at the pool.
There was one person Elvis Presley trusted more than anyone else behind the gates of Graceland. Not family, not his closest friends, not a bodyguard, not a bandmate, but his maid, Nancy Rooks. For over a decade, she stood quietly by his side, cooking his meals, folding his shirts, and most importantly, and the end of it all, he told her something that he did not dare to tell anyone else. One day, he looked her in the eyes and told her something he made her promise to never repeat, a secret Elvis confided in her when no one else was around. A truth so personal, so shocking, that he made her promise never to share it. Until now. Nancy has finally broken her silence, and what she's revealed has stunned even the most devoted Elvis fans. And why is she choosing now to finally reveal it? Stay with us, because this secret is downright groundbreaking. Before her death, Elvis Presley's maid finally told the secret he made her promise to keep. There was only one person Elvis Presley ever trusted enough to share a truth he couldn't tell anyone else. Not a bodyguard, not a member of his band, not even his own family. That person wasn't famous. She wasn't rich. She was his maid. Nancy Rooks had worked quietly behind the scenes at Graceland for over a decade. To outsiders, she was just a cook, just someone folding laundry or cleaning rooms. But to Elvis, she was something else entirely, a quiet witness to the man he became when the spotlight was off. She saw him when the crowds were gone, when the laughter faded, when the weight of being the king became too heavy to carry alone. And one day, in a moment of rare vulnerability, he looked her in the eye and entrusted her with a secret, one he made her swear to never repeat. For decades, Nancy kept that promise. She guarded it fiercely, never chasing fame, never exploiting her connection to the king. She remained silent, even as books were written, rumors flew, and documentaries tried to fill in the blanks. But near the end of her life, that silence began to crack. And what she revealed left fans stunned. Because what Elvis told her wasn't a story for headlines. It was something much deeper, much darker. And now, the truth she carried for so long is changing the way people remember the final days of the most iconic musician of the 20th century. Graceland, the private world few ever saw. Nancy Rooks was hired in 1967 to work as a maid and cook inside Graceland. But from the moment she stepped through the door, she realized she hadn't entered a mansion. She'd entered a storm. Graceland was grand, yes, with its chandeliers, velvet curtains, and golden decor. But beneath all that polish, the house pulsed with a strange, shifting rhythm. Some days, the halls echoed with laughter, piano chords, and the thrum of late-night conversations. Other times, a hush would fall so thick it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Nancy saw Elvis at his most human, shuffling through the kitchen barefoot, hair messy, yawning over his coffee, asking if there was any bacon left. He greeted her with warmth, always polite, always soft-spoken, unless he wasn't. He could be charming, even boyish, one moment, and withdrawn or moody the next. At 2 in the morning, he might be pacing the hallways in silence, lost in thought, or breaking into a spontaneous gospel song that filled the house with soul. Graceland didn't follow a clock. It followed him. And Nancy, without complaint, learned to adapt. To the world, he was the king of rock and roll, but to her, he was just Mr. Elvis, a man full of contradictions, brilliance, and quiet fragility. And she had no idea how deep into his private world she was about to be pulled. Behind the fame, the maid who never looked away. Nancy's job went far beyond scrubbing counters or cooking meals. She was there for the 3 a.m. cravings, the unannounced gatherings, and the sudden emotional spirals that no one else ever saw. If Elvis was restless, if he needed a snack, a laugh, or just a quiet moment with someone who wouldn't ask questions, Nancy was there. She helped him get dressed, sometimes while he was still wearing his clothes. She laid out his scarves and rings with precision, always remembering which watch matched which jumpsuit. She arranged the pool area just so, kept his favorite snacks within arm's reach, and knew exactly how he liked his sweet potato pie. Hot, soft, and made from scratch, even if it was the middle of the night. Elvis was obsessed with cleanliness, showering multiple times a day, sometimes within the same hour. And yet he allowed Nancy into his most private spaces, into the bathroom, into the bedroom, into the chaos. She became a steady presence in a world where nothing stayed steady for long. The noise, the fame, the pressure, it all swirled around him constantly. But Nancy didn't pry. She didn't judge. She watched, listened, and stayed loyal. Somewhere along the way, she stopped being just an employee. She became the person who would carry his most sacred and important secret. The morning everything changed. August 16, 1977, began like so many others inside Graceland. Strange, sleepless, unpredictable. Elvis had been up all night playing racquetball with Ginger Alden and his cousin Billy. Just before dawn, he returned to the house. Nancy was already in the kitchen, preparing for another long day. He looked pale and exhausted. "No food," he said, "just some water." Nancy didn't think much of it. She sent Pauline, another maid, upstairs with a jug, the kind they used for orange juice. But Pauline noticed something off. "I've never seen him drink like that," she said later. "So fast, so desperate." Nancy brushed it off at the time. Maybe he was dehydrated from the game. Maybe he was just tired. Then came the sound, a thud. Not loud, not violent, just wrong. Nancy paused, listened. Silence followed, and she went back to work, convincing herself it was nothing. But what happened over the next few hours would haunt her for the rest of her life. The discovery. At exactly 1:50 p.m., the stillness inside Graceland was broken by the crackle of the intercom. A tremor of urgency echoed through the house, and Nancy Rooks knew instantly. Something was wrong. Her heart tightened in her chest as a cold wave of dread crept over her. Without hesitation, she dropped what she was doing and rushed toward the staircase. The hallway felt longer than usual, stretched by fear and the weight of uncertainty. The air was heavy, the silence suffocating. Every step echoed louder than the last as she approached the bathroom. And then she saw him. Elvis was lying face down on the floor, utterly still. There was no movement, no breath, no sign of life. The sight hit her like a blow to the chest. She didn't scream, she didn't collapse. Her instincts took over. She turned immediately and went to find help. By the time the medics arrived, there was nothing more to be done. But Nancy wasn't finished. She took charge with the quiet efficiency of someone who knew the house better than anyone. She guided the paramedics through the winding halls, up the narrow staircase, through the tight corners of a home now cloaked in something colder than grief. Her hands moved with calm, her voice was steady, but her mind was reeling. And beneath it all, a single question began forming. One that would follow her for the rest of her life. What had she just witnessed? The cost of silence. But for Nancy, that answer never fully sat right. In the years that followed, quiet doubts began to grow, not just in her mind, but among those who had been closest to the scene. Whispers surfaced about missing prescription bottles, timelines that didn't line up, and strange inconsistencies in the hours leading up to Elvis's collapse. And Nancy, though never one to seek attention, eventually admitted something that changed everything. Before the paramedics arrived, someone, she never said who, told her to tidy up the bathroom. Just a little. Nothing major. Just make it look presentable. So she did. She wiped a counter, moved a towel, straightened a few things on instinct, the way she always did. At the time, it felt harmless, routine. But later, as reports circulated about missing pills and altered scenes, she started to worry. Had she unknowingly erased part of the truth? "I didn't know what I was covering up," she reportedly said. "I just did what I was told." It wasn't an admission of guilt, but it was a moment of painful clarity, and that moment would follow her for the rest of her life. The rooms no one was allowed to enter. After Elvis's death, Graceland transformed from a private sanctuary into a public monument. Fans came from around the world, lining up in the heat just to glimpse the life he left behind. Tour guides walked guests past velvet ropes and roped-off rooms. Gift shops opened. Souvenirs and posters lined the walls. His voice played through speakers. His image was everywhere, but not everything was open. The upstairs remained off-limits. His bedroom, his bathroom, the very place where everything ended. It was sealed, sacred, untouched by flash photography and souvenir maps. Only a select few were allowed to go up there. Nancy Rooks was one of them. Each time she climbed those stairs to dust a shelf or fold a shirt, the memories would return. Vivid and sharp. The silence, the thud, the man lying face down on the cold floor. She didn't just clean the room. She relived it. She moved through those spaces not as a housekeeper, but as someone who had been there when the world shifted. Someone still carrying the truth, pressed quietly into the folds of her memory. And over time, that truth began to push its way to the surface. Because some stories don't stay buried forever. The secret comes out. In the final year of her life, something in Nancy Rooks shifted. She began to speak more openly, not in front of cameras, not to journalists, but to a small circle of people she trusted. Friends, former colleagues, people who had known her not just as Elvis's maid, but as the quiet woman who had seen more than she ever said. She didn't give dramatic interviews. She never went on talk shows. Selling secrets to tabloids was never her style. She wasn't chasing headlines, she was searching for peace. But even without fanfare, her words carried weight. She confided that Elvis had been struggling far more than the public ever knew. He wasn't just tired, he was worn down. She had watched him take medications that weren't always prescribed to him. Pills came and went, often brought in by others, sometimes swapped, sometimes forgotten in the rush. She remembered how he had started falling asleep in the middle of sentences, during meals, in the middle of conversations that had barely begun. It wasn't just physical exhaustion, it was something deeper, emotional, spiritual, as though he was slowly giving in to a weight no one else could see. And then she said it. Elvis didn't just die, he faded, and no one around him stopped it. A quiet confession with loud consequences. Nancy revealed one more detail, something she had never written down, not even in her carefully worded memoir. In those frantic, chaotic moments after Elvis was found unresponsive, someone turned to her and asked her to clean up the scene. Just a little, just enough to straighten things up, to make the bathroom look less chaotic before the paramedics arrived. She did it instinctively, wiping a counter, folding a towel, picking up a few scattered items. It was second nature to her. After all, that was her job. She wasn't thinking about consequences or implications. She was thinking about order, about doing what she was told. But in the days that followed, when the media descended on Graceland, when stories clashed and timelines blurred, she began to wonder, had she erased something important? Had she helped obscure the truth? Not out of malice, not to deceive, but out of loyalty. And that realization, quiet and persistent, haunted her more than anything else. Because sometimes the smallest actions carry the heaviest regrets. Fans react, and everything changes. When Nancy's final words began to circulate, the reaction was swift and divided. Some fans refused to believe it, others felt betrayed, and many praised her for finally speaking up. Online forums exploded. Biographers revisited their timelines. New questions were asked. Could the truth have been known all along? Did Nancy's small cleanup alter the official record? And who else knew? The Presley estate stayed quiet, but among the people who had worked at Graceland, those who had once shared Nancy's silence, something shifted. The truth had finally found a voice, a legacy of loyalty and honesty. Nancy Rooks never asked for the spotlight. She loved Elvis, not as a superstar, but as the man who once asked her to hem his pants while he cracked jokes. She kept his secrets. She protected his dignity. And in the end, she told the truth. Not to damage his legacy, but to honor it. Because sometimes love means telling the truth, even if it comes decades too late.